As it suffers more and more military setbacks, ISIS is being forced to grow more creative and more barbaric with its executions. Earlier today, video was released that allegedly shows the burning alive of a captured Jordanian pilot. Supporters of the group shared a video showing Lieutenant Muath al-Kasasbeh dressed in an orange jumpsuit standing in a cage before being burned alive. The footage appeared at the end of an over 20-minute video condemning Jordanian forces' involvement in coalition airstrikes against the militant group. An important fact, which I'm sure will come up in our discussion of it, is that according to Jordanian authorities, the actual execution was done on January 3rd, whereas we had been led to believe up until very recently that the pilot was still alive just days ago. Now, we made a decision internally that we will not be showing photos of the actual execution. If you are interested in them, there are many places online where you can see it. For me personally, I only speak for myself, I feel like showing someone being burned alive gets into torture porn territory. I don't think that there's anything constructive to be gained from seeing it. Use your imagination, you know how horrific it is. Now, obviously, this is terrible. We had heard up until recently that the pilot could be used in part of a 3-country negotiation that would have allowed for the release of a terrorist that had been held since 2005 by Jordanian authorities. That, of course, will not happen now, and it comes just days after the execution of another captured Japanese tourist. So obviously horrific. It's slightly different. Burning alive. I mean, we've seen many horrific forms of torture committed by ISIS. I think this one goes above and beyond even for them.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about here. In terms of us not showing the video, obviously, which I wasn't even able to find the video today. That's how quickly people are taking it down. But in terms of us not showing the images, you know, I think at the beginning when this ISIS thing really started and the beheadings were going, that was probably around late June, July or so. Even on my show, we showed some of the beginnings of the beheadings, not the actual beheading, but some of the speeches before, because I thought it was important for people to understand that some really sick, twisted, so that some really sick, twisted stuff was happening, and that was when it was just happening, so it was an intro to all of that. We haven't been doing it for the last month or two. We didn't do the Japanese one, even though it's still happening, because at this point everyone knows about it. This thing with this burning a live human being in a cage, burning him, there's no reason to show any of this, so I'm completely on board what we're doing here. I know that's a sidebar to really the guts of the story, but I think it's important to address.
Yeah, and I understand the other news organizations. I'm sure that they've had discussions, and perhaps they think that it's important that we show that we're not going to be scared off, and so perhaps showing the footage, I don't know, gets that idea across in some way. It's just a decision that we made internally here. Who knows in the future? Now, the reason that we are talking about the story, whereas we did not really cover the Japanese hostage that had been taken when they were trying to do the ransom deal with Japan for $200 million, is that this is a foreign fighter, the Jordanian pilot, his F-16 crashed near Raqqa, and Jordan, as we're gonna show you some of the quotes, they're promising great retribution. Now, they had already been involved in a military campaign against ISIS. I don't know exactly how you ramp it up, but perhaps they're going to commit more forces. And so this does have military consequences for the conflict with ISIS, which is why it rises to a level of newsworthiness that simply advertising the fact that they're taking hostages too often feels like doing PR for ISIS. This is a slightly different situation from my point of view.
To that point, real quick, you know, this negotiations thing, we just found out, I think it was today, that this happened about a month ago, actually. So we're finding out about today. But even in the last couple of weeks, they've been talking about negotiating with the Japanese for money to release the hostages. They were talking about that with the Jordanians as well. You simply cannot negotiate with these people. And if that's not clear at this point, look, the Jordanians were negotiating over someone that we now know was dead the entire time. There is no negotiations, I don't think, in a case like this.
Yeah, and I mean, we knew before that negotiating with them almost certainly will inspire them to commit further acts of both terrorism but also hostage taking.
And you give them money to fund the operation.
Exactly, which makes it easier for them to do it in the future. But now we know that you can't even trust them to be alive the people that they say are. And Jordan did seem interested in possibly doing this prisoner transfer up until this video was released.
So, you know, just like you don't want to give them ransom money, you don't want to play into their hands. I think it's a great idea not to show the video. I'm against showing the video. That's exactly what they want us to do. They want us to show the video. I'm sure And then they want us to shit our pants about it, right? Isn't that what this? So what is the point of them doing this even worse than a beheading? So now they're lighting a guy on fire. What do they want? What do they want? Well, we know every time that they release a video, they get new recruits. So now this is even more heinous for whatever reason. When the more heinous the video ISIS releases, they still get more recruits.
Yeah.
What would be the other purpose? Okay, you want to terrorize people. Do you want to scare Jordan?
Yeah.
But
Well,
do you
that's what
want,
they say,
But
but
do you
it's-
want? Do they want Jordan to overreach like we overreached in Afghanistan and Iraq? Do they want that to happen? I mean,
Well, I think partly what they want is what Jordan is about to do. It sounds like Jordan's about to execute 6 ISIS hostages that they have in Jordan, and then that'll further inflame things.
Yes.
They just want an endless escalation.
they want it to escalate, right?
Yeah.
So this plays. So Jordan. Well, let's read the quotes from them, I guess. And
Okay, sure. So we have one quote, a spokesman for the Armed Forces of Jordan who says, "While the military forces mourn the martyr, they emphasize his blood will not be shed in vain. Our punishment and revenge will be as huge as the loss of the Jordanians." And yeah, so the speculation is that one of the reasons that they did this, particularly to the Jordanian pilot, is to get Jordan to sort of back off from the conflict, as if that has ever been the result of killing a member of a foreign nation.
in a horrific way.
So that makes it hard to believe that that could even be their motivation because it's so nonsensical.
Yeah, and by the way, Jordan's not doing that much in the fight in ISIS. They're really not. We're doing most of it, and we've got some bases there and stuff like that. But they're not doing that much. This guy did happen to get shot down over Iraq, but they're not adding that much. So even that argument's probably not that valid.
Yeah.
And so they're going to do exactly what they want them to do. They're going to overreact. They're going to come at them. They're going to revenge kill. They're going to kill their own prisoners. So we all know. So that's just going to escalate the violence. This doesn't do anything. I know.
So what are we supposed to do?
If I was in charge of Jordan, you can't go, hey, we're going to treat their prisoners nicely now. I know you can't say that, but that's actually, we talked about this with the torture thing. That's one of the reasons why you do treat prisoners well in war, is so that those guys when they're in battle, they will surrender if they're losing.
Yeah, exactly.
So if they know that they're going to be tortured like this or killed, they won't ever surrender. So it makes even the battle even worse and more gruesome. So again, this is all I know is that this is what they want us to do. They want Jordan to overreact like this, kill their prisoners, start coming at them. I know, so I just say you got to somehow resist doing what they want you to do.
Yeah, and by the way, King Hussein was in the United States today. He was supposed to meet with Obama today.
Right.
He's thought of as sort of a bit of a Western puppet in the Arab world.
Yes.
So the idea that they can now, he has to come down hard because he needs his cred in the Arab world.
Yeah.
So you're right, they're playing us at both, they're not playing us, they're playing the Jordanians and us. They're playing everybody at both sides.
And they've been effectively playing every side so far. I think ISIS has been winning certainly the propaganda war the way they want to win it. So they've certainly been, they went from 70 guys to 700 guys to now they control a big swath of that area over there, right?
Yeah, and by the way, remember 2 weeks ago in the State of the Union, Obama said that ISIL is on the run or something to that effect, which then the next morning, Biden said, maybe we got to do some troops on the ground, which again, Chuck Hagel, who just resigned as the Secretary of Defense, he said it this week too. So it's very confusing as to what's actually working or not working.
And if this gets us to put boots on the ground, there's no end to boots on the ground. You're not going to ever kill ISIS. You're never going to kill their idea of their hatred of the West. It's never going to go, hey, by the way, we got rid of al-Qaeda and ISIS and everybody's regular.
But Jimmy, it worked in Iraq the first time. In Afghanistan, didn't those work out?
Again, we just created a bigger, your point is a good one, Dave. We created bigger problems.
Yeah, and we do have to bear in mind that not only did we a few weeks ago have actual soldiers in Iraq, but we also sent, in the wake of the State of the Union, an additional 3,000 soldiers. That's why I think it's all the more important that we need to have some formal authorization for the use of force against ISIS, some sort of restrictions on what can be done. And I agree, I think that they are simultaneously fighting an actual war and a propaganda war. I don't know internationally if this is a win for them. I assume it'll serve the function you said of helping with recruitment and all of that. They seem to have been doing pretty well in that. But I also know that they have been having serious setbacks, both in terms of the number of ISIS members who've been killed in the past 2 months or so. They haven't been taking over additional territory and have been pushed out of some of the territory that they had already taken. And we know that we'd read a report a few weeks ago about some of their staple crops that were supposed to be used by ISIS as an example of their ability to not just conquer territory, but actually govern the territory, it's expected that it'll be a particularly bad year for those crops. They don't seem to be able to show the people of the lands they've conquered that they can actually be responsible governors of that territory. And so they might be winning the propaganda war, but they also still have to keep the people on their side.
Right, I get that, but I love when people say, oh, they're not getting the social services that the people thought they were getting, things like that. They're literally chopping people's heads off and burning them alive. Like, I don't think that they're necessarily that interested in governing properly, with the principles of governance that any of us in the West. No, I get right. I get your point that they need eventually, if they were to take the entire, restore the caliphate, that eventually they'd have to govern in some. But I just think that's so far off. What they want to do now is just sow volatility and hatred and cause it, and then cause our reaction, and that's exactly what they're getting out of us.